honestly, it wasn't until 2003 when I had a wake up call because I started bleeding after using the restroom. And it turned out I had precancerous polyps in my sigmoid colon. That I went to the Optimum Health Institute and I found out, wow, gosh, what you eat actually has an impact on what diseases you get and what diseases you can reverse and how you look and feel. And up until then, that was never a conversation. I just assumed your genetics is your lot in life. My grandmother, my great grandmother, my mother, diabetic, obese, and I was just basically kind of following in their footsteps.
Welcome to the Habit Healers Podcast, where small habits create big transformations. I'm Dr. Laurie Marbas, and here we explore the science and the stories behind lasting change. Through real-life experiences, expert insights, and practical strategies, we uncover the habits that heal physically, mentally, and spiritually. So if you're ready to break free from frustration and build a life of health and vitality, you are absolutely in the right place. So let's get started. But right before we do, I'd love to say thank you to our sponsors.
Welcome to the Dr. Laurie Marbas podcast, where she interviews experts in health and science, sharing their expertise so you can live your healthiest life.
This episode of the podcast is proudly sponsored by Fit Vegan Coaching, the world's leading whole food, plant-based body recomposition program for Gen X and baby boomers. Founded by Maxime, whose personal journey began after losing his ex-fiancée to breast cancer, Fit Vegan Coaching is on a mission to disease-proof the world through the transformative power of plant-based eating and fitness. This program is the Rolls-Royce of plant-based coaching, offering all-inclusive services, personalized plans, world-class accountability, lifelong support, and more. Say goodbye to the yo-yo dieting and embrace a lasting transformation that will rev up your metabolism even post-transformation. Ready to take charge of your health and vitality? Head over to fitvegan.ca, that's fitvegan.ca, and mention Dr. Laurie for exclusive bonus savings when you sign up. Don't miss this opportunity to join the movement towards a healthier, fitter, and more vibrant you. This episode of the podcast is proudly sponsored by The Healing Kitchen, your path to vibrant health. Immerse yourself in the transformative program, guided by the combined expertise of myself, Dr. Laurie Marbas, and Chef Brittany Giroudi, who has lost 70 pounds on a whole food plant-based diet. Here's what's in store for you. Virtual weekly sessions. Engage in an immersive 60-minute virtual session every single week, where you'll delve into the world of wholesome plant-based goodness right from your own kitchen. Cooking with Brittany the first half hour. Unleash your inner chef as you're captivated by Chef Brittany Giroudi's culinary mastery that will delight your taste buds and nourish your body. Medical Q&A with Dr. Laurie the last half hour. Prioritize your well-being during the second half hour. I will personally address your medical inquiries, providing evidence-based insights and personalized advice, empowering you to make informed choices for your health. So join us on the Healing Kitchen to help you step into a healthier and most vibrant future. Well, welcome to the Habit Healers Podcast, where transformation really starts with one healing habit at a time. I'm Dr. Laurie Marbas, a board-certified family and medicine physician, lifestyle medicine physician, passionate about the power of habits to heal. And each week we explore inspiring stories of resilience and expert insights of behavior change and science-backed strategies to help you unlock your healthiest, most vibrant life. And today I'm honored to sit down with Chef AJ, who's a trailblazer in the plant-based movement, who has been spent decades helping others reclaim their health through food and lifestyle. But beyond her expertise in nutrition, Chef AJ's is one of profound transformation, one that recently took an unexpected turn with a diagnosis that's tested her resilience in ways she's and all of us have never imagined. And so in this conversation, I hope we get to dive into more about plant-based living, the challenges and the triumphs in the way. So welcome, Chef AJ. I'm so excited to have you here
Oh,
today.
thank you so much, Dr. Marbas. I like that you're dealing with resilience because pretty soon resilience is going to be my middle name.
Yes, absolutely. Well, let's just give a little backstory, if you wouldn't mind, just telling people kind of what was the young Chef AJ before you even found plants? Where did that
Well,
all begin?
that's funny because the young chef AJ was still a chef, if you will, because when I was 7 years old, I got an easy bake oven for Hanukkah, and I think that's what started my love of at least baking. I use the word chef loosely with me, even though I went to culinary school. I was a pastry chef at a restaurant in Los Angeles for many years, but I loved baking because what's so cool about baking is like, well, first of all, you're getting a dessert usually, which was the best part. But I've always been kind of fascinated with science. I lived in Chicago. I used to love to go to the Museum of Science and Industry. And when I visited my brother in Pittsburgh, I used to love to go to the Carnegie Science Center. And what was really cool about baking is like with the Easy Bake Oven, you have this little package of probably sugar, flour, I don't know what, or oil, and you added a little water and you put it in literally, it was a light bulb, a light bulb. And then all of a sudden you had a cake. And I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. I mean, I'm 7 and I'm baking cakes, you know? So I always did love to prepare food because for me it's like arts and crafts. It's fun. And the thing that's nice is, if you do a painting and it doesn't come out very good, you're probably not going to hang it on the wall, but if it does the food, you get to eat your mistakes with food. I mean, unless you put way too much like spice or way too much salt in, most things are salvageable. Even the motto of my culinary school is it's not what you can make, it's what you could fix. So I find a lot of people hate to cook and bake, and I just find it very relaxing and therapeutic, to be doing something with your hands and find it meditative. And I mean, it's different if you're doing it every day for a job at a high stress restaurant, but I find it very fun and very relaxing to prepare food.
So that was your first wonderful habit, was that you found something you enjoyed and that it was fun. So was it ever a job? It was just something that you love to do?
Well, I mean, it was a job for about 4 years when I was a pastry chef, but even then it wasn't very stressful because I worked for a restaurant where I got to choose my hours. And so traditionally, pastry chefs, I were getting up at 4 in the morning, but it wasn't that a restaurant that was very busy at that time. So as long as I got my orders done and made whatever they needed, I would come in sometimes 4 o'clock and, bake till 11. And I loved the flexibility of that. And even a couple of times, I don't know if this is allowed, but if I couldn't make it, I just make it at home. So, I do better when I don't have strict like hours like that. But I think for some people, it might be a very stressful job. I mean, I watched a couple episodes of that show, The Bear. I didn't like it, but if it was like that, then it would not be fun, I don't think.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go to your plant-based journey. So what first inspired you to go plant-based, and what would you say were your biggest challenges that you faced early on?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I didn't have the word plant-based in 1960 or even vegan, to be honest. I mean, I guess the vegetarian was a word. I knew from the time I was young that I thought eating dead animals was totally disgusting. I came into the world like this for whatever reason. I have high sensitivity, and that sensitivity includes animals. And even though now we have, organizations and t-shirts that say, if you love animals like dogs, how can you eat animals like cows? I didn't have that vernacular, but I just felt it was like, at the very least, weird to eat animals. But it just seemed like, well, why would you eat your friends? I mean, I had a pet goldfish. Why would I be eating a fish? I mean, it was just, I actually even had a pet snail. It's like, why? These are sentient beings. But when you're little and, you don't have a car, you don't have a job, you don't have money. And, when you try to say that to your mom in 1960s, like, well, still back then, where are you going to get your protein? We didn't have PCRM or the internet to learn that, yeah, you can get better and more utilizable protein just from eating plants. And so, I really, it's funny. I was talking to somebody. I wish I could have stuck up, wish I could have stood up to my mom more and say, I'm not going to eat it, kind of like Greta Thunberg, I'm not going to eat this. But my mom was sensitive to the degree that, like, she didn't make me eat things that I really didn't want to eat. So, in other words, I could only eat animals as a child if it didn't look like an animal. And what I mean by that is if she made chili con carne and there were little pieces of ground beef, yes, I know that is a cow, but it didn't look like a cow and I could eat it, for example. But if it was like a rib and there was a bone, or chicken, if there was a bone, oh, fish, I always thought, like, why does anybody eat fish? The head is on it, the eyes are looking at you, the bones are there. I remember we're Jewish, my grandmother would get like lox heads and suck, like, it was just so gross to me. Or eating, Jewish people ate tongue. It's like, ooh, So I could eat things like tuna in a can because it didn't look like a fish. But if it looked like the animal at all, I just wouldn't eat it. The kind of cool thing about growing up Jewish and being kosher is I didn't get exposed to many of the tastes that people today love. Like, people say things like, oh my God, lobster, shrimp, crab legs, oysters, clams, pork, bacon. all kinds of things people are saying are that eat animal products and like them, saying they're so delicious. Pepperoni pizza. I never tasted those things because in Judaism, when you're kosher, first of all, you don't mix meat and milk. So a cheeseburger, a bacon cheeseburger, well, you wouldn't have the bacon, but you don't. The idea was you don't cook a calf in its mother's milk. So I never had those things. I was actually allergic to milk anyway, even though it wasn't diagnosed till a little later, but it kind of always made me sick. So I was the weird kid. Like we would get pizza and I would just tear the cheese off. It's like, because I knew on some level it was making me sick. And so I didn't eat all that many animals. Like if on Shabbat, Friday night, when they would make, I forget what it's called, like not it's not pot roast. I can't think of whatever they made on Friday night. There were two end pieces, and I would fight my grandfather for that because it was the only one I could eat because it was burned beyond recognition. If there was any blood or anything, I wouldn't eat it. So it wasn't really that hard for me to become vegan on September 1st, 1977, when I went to the University of Pennsylvania because I didn't like it and I didn't like animal products. I didn't there was nothing that I felt tasted that good. Oddly enough, this is going to sound so gross, but when I think back, the one thing I thought tasted good was my grandmother's chopped liver. Now, when I think about it now, that was probably the grossest thing you could eat, the organ meat of an animal. And we know that everything gets detoxified. But my grandmother, she just, oh my God. I mean, a Jewish grandmother's chopped liver is like manna from heaven, because it's because of the onion and all this kind of stuff that's in it. But it wasn't hard for me to give up something that I didn't really like anyway. It's kind of like I gave up drinking. I mean, I tried alcohol once in college and I got deathly ill. I vomited. I ended up in the hospital and they said, you have some kind of condition or gene. And it's like, it wasn't hard for me to give it up because I didn't like it in the first place. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So I became a vegan at the University of Pennsylvania because I was trying to be a veterinarian. That's why I went to UPenn. I don't think I got into Cornell. Maybe that's why, but I can't remember now. But I wanted to go to an Ivy League school like my brother. And so that was important. So I flew all the way from LA, and that was a mistake because it's 17 because I had skipped fourth grade, and I don't think teachers should skip kids just for being smart because I would have been smarter if I could just have stayed. And also, I didn't have the emotional maturity at 17 to be leaving home from LA to Philadelphia. But anyway, I always joke that instead of becoming veterinarian, I became a vegetarian because in order to pay for my college, I was on a work study program and I had to work for a veterinarian. And the first day of the job, he handed me a tank of live salamanders and said, here, I need you to cut their heads off. And I'm like, well, why? And he goes, I'm doing protein lens regeneration experiments in the amphibian. And we just need their eye. And then after you finish the salamanders, you got to do the frogs. Well, I once was taken fishing like by a relative, and I couldn't even put the worm on the. I have high sensitivity to like anything. Even today, when I get blood taken, I'm like I just couldn't do it. So I cut the head off one salamander, and I just literally started vomiting. And I went to student health, and I'm like, God, I'm never going to eat any of your animals again. There's no reason to do that. So I became an ethical vegan. The problem was I wasn't a healthy vegan. And in 1977, forks over knives had not come out. So I wasn't doing it for health anyway, because I don't think I was all that healthy. I was overweight, actually obese at the time. And so what I did is I took basically the standard American diet and removed animal products. I didn't put anything good in, like fruits and vegetables and whole grains and legumes. I just took out animal products. So oh my God, there's so many things that are vegan, including Oreos. Vegan does not mean healthy. So I look at vegan more as an ethical choice and plant exclusive more as a healthy choice. And honestly, it wasn't until 2003 when I had a wake up call because I started bleeding after using the restroom. And it turned out I had precancerous polyps in my sigmoid colon that I went to the Optimum Health Institute and I found out, wow, gosh, what you eat actually has an impact on what diseases you get and what diseases you can reverse and how you look and feel. And up until then, that was never a conversation. I just assumed your genetics is your lot in life. My grandmother, my great grandmother, my mother, diabetic, obese, and I was just basically kind of following in their footsteps, not quite as obese because Dr. Goldhammer said because I became vegan so young, there was a lot less crap that I was eating in terms of, animal products. So I wasn't eating like fried animal products or those kind of things that probably I didn't, my health was better than theirs because, I
Mhm.
was eating less crap.
Right, absolutely. So, was there a place that you ever thought, so what was that turning point that really helped you understand, the weight and the unhealthy vegan foods, and how did you transition to that?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. When you think about it, I transitioned slowly. And that's why when I look back at all the programs I taught people, people have unrealistic expectations, especially in the day of Ozempic, how long something should take. Of course, we have these phones now, and we have this immediate gratification, and the same thing comes with health. People want it now, but good health is earned. It doesn't happen in 24 hours or even in a 21-day program, even maybe in a 1-year program. And so the first thing I learned, and it happened in stages, is so when I was 43, and I was bleeding, and I had this sigmoidoscopy because at the time I had an HMO, and they wouldn't do a colonoscopy. Now today they would, because of all the relatives I had that had colon cancer and died. But back then, they wouldn't. They said, well, we're only going to do a sigmoidoscopy. Well, the fact that they have found all these polyps in the sigmoidoscopy means they probably had them other than where they could see them. But the thing is because here's the other thing, pooping is very important, people. If that commercial that says normal is what's normal for you, it's not true. You're supposed to poop every day, and probably multiple times a day. And I was going to the bathroom maybe once a week, and it was very strained.
Oh,
Of course it was, I was developing this and it was bleeding, because why didn't I poop? Well, because I wasn't eating any fiber, because all the plant foods with fiber, like fruits and vegetables and whole grains and legumes, I wasn't eating. I was eating a junk food vegan diet: Coke, Slurpees, Dr. Pepper, potato chips, candies, cakes, cookies, pies, and ice cream. It was vegan, but it was completely devoid of any health or nutrition. And
mhm.
so normally in a sigmoidoscopy or a colonoscopy, they have like these calipers, and they can just remove the polyps right then and biopsy them. But because even with that terrible prep that people have to do for colonoscopy, where you're like supposedly cleaning out your system, mine wasn't clean. He couldn't, it was just so full of
Wow.
whatever, poop or whatever is in there when it's not clean. He couldn't risk the infection and get a clean shot. And he said, he'll have to come back and probably have to do like regular surgery. And that was the thing that was like, no. This is the situation I'm finding right now with my delaying my own lung cancer treatment, because surgery, well, not surgery itself, but anesthesia is the scariest thing in the world to me. Because when I was in my teens, I was supposed to have an outpatient procedure where I was going to go home in a few hours or the same day. And it turned out I had an allergic reaction to the general anesthesia. And they had a really hard time waking me up. And I remember waking up, and I remember his name, Harvey. He was a respiratory therapist. And because you hear things. Even when before they know you're conscious. I hear hearing is like the last thing to go, and I'm hearing this. Okay, get the ambu bag, get the crash cart. Okay, we got to bring a ventilator in, and I'm just like. I was a respiratory therapist at the time, and it's like I did not want to be on a ventilator. Those things are rough for the patient, and they're hard to get off of. And I'm like, and so my eyes open, and I see Harvey with the bamboo bag, and then, I started breathing, thank God, but I still ended up in the hospital for about 6 weeks from a same-day operation with out-of-controlled asthma. And I never really quite got an answer as to what happened. All I'm told now is, well, it's safer today. Well, it's when you have a trauma like that, in your mind, it's not any safer. And so I have always avoided every kind of procedure known to man if it involved anesthesia. I could have like for example, I had carpal tunnel surgery, but that wasn't general anesthesia. They were able to do, I forget what it's called, but where I can do things. I was able to have eye surgery, but anything that involves that they must do with a general, I've said no to. And in a way, it's a good thing, because that's actually kind of ironically how I ended up losing weight permanently at the age of 52. So when I was 50, or a few weeks before my 50th birthday, I was in an office building, and this was caught on camera. They had mopped the floor without a sign. I fell and I had a really bad break in my knee, and it took a long time for me to heal. And I was in a wheelchair for about 4 months, because I was like, 60 or 70 pounds heavier than I am now. And I didn't have the strength to use crutches or even a walker. So I was in a wheelchair for 4 months, and my husband had to help with everything, including my activities of daily living. And it was just very embarrassing. And I said, oh, when I get out of this wheelchair, I'm going to do something about this weight. And, I remember an orthopedic doctor, because I had, they wanted to do surgery. And I'm like, well, what's the benefit of doing surgery? They said, here's what they said. And this is kind of like reminds me of oncology too. Well, you're either going to get better, you're going to get worse, or you're going to stay the same. Well, that's going to happen without surgery, you know? So I may as well just not do it. But the doctor said, you know, have you ever thought about losing weight? Because every pound you're overweight is like 5 to 10 pounds of additional pressure to your knee. And I'm like, oh no, I never thought about that. But anyway, but I did think about it in that way. It was presented. It was like, wow, you know, I never thought about it that way. And so it was after that that I ended up going, not quite right then. Let's see, I'm trying to, yeah, I ended up going to that's okay. So the knee thing broke. So then I had it's hard to, oh no, the knee thing was later. So I had already been to the Optimum Health Institute. It was shortly thereafter that I went to the True North Health Center. And I was not actually going there for weight loss, but they have the secret weapons of weight loss and weight management that work there, Dr. Alan Goldhammer and Dr. Doug Lyle. And really, what they taught me wasn't anything mysterious. It was basically what Dr. McDougall's been teaching for years and Dr. Dean Ornish, a principle called calorie density. It's Dr. Roll's work is based on that. But I never really quite understood it. And once I learned that, for me, it was fairly easy to lose the weight and keep it off because they were giving me kind of a scientific formula and explanation. And it wasn't about like, well, these foods are good or these foods are bad. I wasn't looking at it that way or seeing if I eat these foods, I'm a bad person. If I eat a cookie, I'm bad. If I eat kale, I'm good. It was simply foods are either calorically dense or they're calorically dilute. And if you want to lose weight, you want to eat more of the calorically dilute foods, which just so happen to have more of the nutrition, the vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, antioxidants, micronutrients, fiber, and water. But they presented it in such a clear and understandable way, but sprinkling in the notion of food addiction, this concept of the pleasure trap, it just really clicked for me. And so that's kind of what happened, going from an obese, unhealthy vegan to a healthier vegan that was still quite overweight to somebody that's, you know, has been at a normal weight for many years now.
So you went through this transition. When did you become the personality of Chef AJ that we all love and adore?
I've always been a little bit of a character. So the people that don't know me may not know that my first love is comedy. Really wanted to be not so much a stand-up comedian, even though I have done and I do stand-up. Stand-up's really hard. I always wanted to be like a comedic actress. Like when I grew up, I always thought like, God, the ideal, like to be, you know, Rhoda Morgenstern on Mary Tyler Moore, because I never saw myself as a leading lady. And even the agents that I had said, you know, you're too fat, you can't be a leading lady. But I always figured I could be like a Joe Pesci or the best friend. Now we thought, God, that would be the coolest thing, you know, to be like on a sitcom, those kind of things. So I was always a character. I was always class clown. Like every year I get in the yearbook, you could see I've been voted class clown. And they had a hard time disciplining me in school because I just always, you know, not mouthed off in a mean way, the teacher, but if there was an opportunity to make a joke, I would make it. And the problem is the teacher would be laughing too. So it would be very hard for them to discipline me. Occasionally I got sent to the principal. Occasionally I had teachers that would say, if you can not say anything for an hour, we'll give you a Three Musketeers bar. So they would negotiate with me. But you know, I was often teachers' pet. Teachers liked me. I didn't have any problem with teachers because I was also really smart and I was a straight A student. Well, really up until like I found out I was dyslexic and later in high school, and I was like, oh my God, why am I like flunking math? Like I cannot do math. Like yeah, it was really hard and I had to get a tutor. But so Chef AJ became Chef AJ in 2003 when I graduated culinary school. But first I became AJ. My legal name is Abby J. And I never liked using my name Abby because I was teased growing up and called Flabby Abby, or they would say Gabby Abby, Shabby Abby, Crabby Abby. So I just never liked my name. And when I came back from the Optimum Health Institute, I was changing my diet from having Coke Slurpees in the morning to having a smoothie in the morning. And I would go to this place called Robex Juice. It's like Jamba Juice, but that's near where I worked. And it was so noisy there with 10 blenders. And they'd say, what's your name? And I go, Abby. What, Abby? I go, AJ. And it turned out that AJ, since I was working at a retirement home as an activity director, it was just a lot easier for the residents to remember AJ, the shorter name tag. Somebody got me a necklace that says AJ. So I became AJ first. And then when I became a chef, the chef was added, which was kind of cool because when I had to audition, maybe audition's the wrong word, but when you get a chef job, at least at the time, you kind of go in and you do like a free day of cooking or baking, and that's how they assess you. And so you apply online, and Chef AJ, they thought I was a guy, and they're like, "Oh, you're not a guy." And I'm like, "No," because I feel like they do prefer men in this industry, in many industries. And so anyway, Chef AJ, that's kind of the story of Chef AJ. But AJ's fine too.
So you would legally change your name to AJ or just
No, I actually legally changed my name from Abby J. Goodman to Abby J, because when I was doing acting, they thought I was double dipping Social Security because having two names. And so I actually legally changed my name when I was 29. And that's a very long and boring process. And that's why when I got married, I didn't want to change it again, because you have to be in court all day and it's so boring. So yeah, but I know I didn't legally change it to Chef AJ or AJ.
Gotcha, gotcha. So now, before we dive into your more recent diagnosis, can we talk a little bit about the emotional impact? We're going to kind of circle back around to anxiety. And can we kind of set the stage for what we're dealing with now? When did you start having more anxiety related symptoms,
Well, you mean like growing up?
personality wise, or
Here's the thing. It what I Because when you come out of the womb anxious, you don't, it's kind of like you don't know that you're anxious because that's all you know, right? And it
Mm,
isn't until you have experience in the world with people that are calm and emotionally stable, like my husband, that you realize, oh, I think there's something wrong with me. I always just felt I was just high energy. People describe me as a whirling dervish, but I know now that really what I was suffering from my whole life was anxiety, OCD. I didn't have social anxiety so much, but really just very bad generalized anxiety and lots of phobias, lots of traumas, all these things, because it's like if you don't go to the doctor and get a diagnosis, how do you know, So I guess in a way it's probably good that I didn't, because who knows, I could have been medicated very young as a child and I wouldn't have want that.
right, right. No, absolutely. So it's interesting. Was there any particular turning point? You're like, wow, this is something I need to start working on or dealing with, or how did you deal with, or how did
Yeah.
you deal with it?
Yeah, you get diagnosed with cancer. That's the turning.
All right, so
Honestly, that what well, I mean, it's not that I haven't tried, because I had gone to many different kinds of practitioners and therapists throughout the years, and with some success with some things. And then I finally kind of learned, look, like Dr. Doug Lisle says, work harder on your environment than you do yourself. So in other words, create an environment where I'm not so prone to be anxious. So that involved leaving LA, which is a very anxiety provoking thing, and not doing things that I know are going to make me anxious. So I was kind of managing it that way. But then when I got diagnosed with cancer, boy, that was like the genie came out of the bottle, because I already had anxiety, a high level of daily anxiety that I managed without drugs. Not that, drugs might work for some people, and I tried them, they were not good for me. I managed it with, things like daily vigorous exercise and things like that. But then, I already had so much anxiety untreated, like really for, 64 years. And then you give me a cancer diagnosis. I think that now being for 2 years now diagnosed with cancer and meeting so many people at various stages of their journey, that even the most stoic, even people that were, in combat, when you get a cancer diagnosis, you get anxiety, even if it's not every day. There's a thing called scanxiety, and I don't know anybody that doesn't get this. You get it right before your scans, those few weeks leading up, because you never know what it's going to be. So that was just like, it was like, wow, what do I do? And I still really don't know what to do. And I keep trying different therapies and practitioners and hoping to find the magic genie that has experience, not just treating anxiety, but specifically anxiety for people with cancer. And, I feel like the answer is just the same for everybody, because what I'm afraid of is that I could die and it could be a slow and painful death. But the reality is I'm fine right now. And I need to just I got to keep reminding myself and coming back to the present moment that all is well right now. But the thing I hold about anxiety is it's future directed. You're worrying about something in the future that may or may not ever happen. And with OCD, you tend to catastrophize, and it's like a hyperactivation of the worst case scenario. But cancer kind of is the worst case scenario. It's one of the worst case scenarios. So it's not like I don't have reason to be anxious. So really, I feel, I don't know, like I feel like God must have a sense of humor. It's like, okay, let's find the most anxious person. Let's see what happens. So now I'm really forced to deal with my daily anxiety in a meaningful way if I want to enjoy whatever time I have left. And so that's my job now. The doctors, the oncologists, they can do what they're going to do, but my job is to find a way to coexist with my anxiety so that I can enjoy the whatever life I have left. Because it's terrible when every day you keep worrying about what's going to happen in the future, because it may happen, but even if the worst case scenario happens, meaning that I die this slow and painful death because my lungs or whatever, I'm not enjoying today, worrying about what's going to happen in the future. And the truth is nobody's future is certain. It's just that other people either have less anxiety or better coping skills, that they don't sit there every day and think about, like for example, whenever my husband leaves, and he actually left right now because I'm doing an interview, like part of me is like, oh my God, he's in the car. He could be in a car accident and die. This is how I always think, or my little dog Bailey. And so this has been a lifelong thing. And I'm going to keep trying until I get something that works, that really works. And I don't have the answer. I see a lot of different people for different types of therapies, and it's almost like they all have a little piece of the puzzle that's helping. But the overarching thing is, like, at the end of the day, it's kind of who I am. It's kind of my personality. I need to come to peace with it and just find a way to mitigate it. And so for me, oh God, that's my favorite. I'm not anxious. I mean, I'm anxious if I were to be performing in front of a crowd. That's different, because people say, well, how you have social anxiety. How can you stand up? Doing the classes with friends, low stakes on Zoom or even in person, is way different than performing it in Vegas, which I'm going to be doing. That's different. Performing and learning and playing is different. But comedy for me is like the best thing, because you can't do improv or stand up and be worried about something in the future. That is the only time that I'm actually in the moment in life and fully present, because you have to be listening. Because if you're thinking, well, okay, if he says this, no, that's not improv. You really have to be present. And so those hours in the day that I'm in improv are the most joyous, because I'm fully present. And I think that's really the lesson. And maybe that's why I got this, because somebody's trying to teach me a lesson that I haven't really been present in my own life.
No, I think that's a beautiful way to look at it, because I was going to tell you, you said you would do better when you come back, right? You remind yourself to come back to the present moment, and you have a natural outlet that you have expanded upon. But Kim, we talk a little bit about the when the diagnosis hit, and then there was a gap of time that you knew, and then you decided to come public, because that in and of itself. And can we talk a little bit about how you were talking to yourself, and then what was the
Oh
reality?
my God.
I would love I would love for you to
I
share
got
that.
the worst advice to keep it secret. That
Yeah.
was the worst thing. I mean, and I do respect the people that gave me that advice, their friends and colleagues, and I understand the reason for that. But again, they didn't have my psychology. And the minute that I told the truth, it was like, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm still anxious about the diagnosis, but carrying a secret like that, there's a saying, I don't know where it came from, but you're only as sick as your secrets. And keeping this secret made me think there must be, there was shame involved. It's like I was a daily YouTuber, and every now and then I wear a brace because of my trigger thumb, and it's like I don't try to hide it. Or if somebody were to say, "Oh, what's that brace?" I'm like, "Oh, I have trigger thumb." I wasn't ashamed, but yet I felt like such a fraud and a phony, because it was diagnosed August 14th, 2023, and then I think I came forward. I think it was December of last year, so it was more than a year and a half later, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, it's so funny because, when people would watch me live, they would be, I don't know, 200 people maybe on average. If Dr. McDougall was a guest, 400. There was 1,600 people. And it's like, we didn't even announce it. And I'm like, whoa, this is so interesting that people find this interesting. But I was, for the first time, telling the truth. I mean, I wasn't like lying about it, but one of the things I learned, this is kind of funny, is there's no such thing as a secret, because at the very beginning, I told a few people, and boy, it's kind of like, like you say to people, like, well, I can keep a secret. It's just the people that I told apparently couldn't. Well, guess what? That's not exactly keeping a secret, but I learned early on. And then what was happening is people were finding out that I didn't want to know because of this. And then I figured, I'd rather be in control of it and tell people.
Right, absolutely. So we had a huge relief, and I know the people that I am with, and my plant-based space were so, supportive and wanting to send you love. And I think I've texted you that
Oh,
before.
yeah. It's so
And
nice. People are except the
uh,
people that aren't nice continue to not be nice, but everybody else has been. I mean, it's like the Crocs told me because I said to them they both have cancer and they came out with it, and I said, "What do you think I should do?" And they said 99% has been positive. You know.
yeah, absolutely. Because that's the other thing, right? So not like it was cancer, but when I had a really rough transition to menopause, and I'm doing all the things that we're supposed to be doing. I'm like, I'm going to share this because I'm sure there are other people who are suffering. And I've been flooded with patients who are plant-based. Like, I'm so glad you're talking about this because I felt like I was doing something wrong. So I think it's such an important journey to share, when you have the ability to, and you got relief, at least from that part of the anxiety. Can we
Hmm.
talk a little bit more about your comedy and what you feel like? Can you bring us into what's going on in your mind, and what is how does that transition from the daily AJ to the comedic AJ, and like what is that difference? Can you
Well, I
describe?
try to be the comedic AJ in my daily life, but
Mm,
I don't have a lot of opportunity because my show is mostly guest driven, meaning it's more of an interview show where I don't get to talk a lot because usually doctors are pretty darn chatty, you know? So, but I always try to bring that in because if when I get hired to host conferences like this one coming up in Vegas or other ones that I've appeared at the past, I'm always funny. People are so surprised when they see me in person how funny I am because I don't, you don't, when you're doing a 10-minute recipe on YouTube, or even when you're doing a daily show, there's not the opportunity to see that side of me. And that's my favorite. The playful side, the funny side is my favorite part of me, So
have you thought about bringing more of that? Maybe do a part of your show where you're just
yeah,
sharing funny insights?
I thought about that. I did have put some stand up, but again, people. I feel like I want to protect that and only do it with people that really,
Mm.
maybe like are in my community. But I think about that a lot because everybody that I've turned on to improv, and a lot of the plant based doctors are taking stand up and improv with me. For the most part, as scary as it is, they've actually loved it, and they just keep coming back because it's so freeing because most of life we kind of know what we're going to do. We know we're going to have to wake up at this time and drive, and you cannot know what's happening next in improv. You think you might, like last night I was doing a scene with my friend Trish, and so I was pretending to be a pregnant woman, and I was like, and I was like, oh, doctor, you got to get this out of me. And then she said something that was so hilarious and unexpected. She goes, it's only been 12 weeks, And that was so funny, and then it changed the direction of the scene to me like I'm just this kind of complaining kind of patient, unrealistic. The surprises in improv are so great. And if people have a chance to see a show, especially if they live in LA and can see the Thursday night show of the Groundlings called Cooking with Gas or the black version on Monday, they will know how great it is because as good as Whose Line Is It Anyway was, you got to see an in-person improv show to really understand why I love this so much.
Oh my gosh. So how do you do that on your daily life? So if someone's dealing with some things and they want to bring more laughter into their world, how would you encourage them to do that just in the daily living?
Well, okay, so first of all, there's all kinds of podcasts, even ones that are comedy and cancer related. But see, I'm very careful about what I watch on. I don't have regular TV, but on streaming, and it's like, funny stuff. Watch funny stuff. Do what Norman Cousins did, and he healed himself of a type of cancer. He rented Mark. I don't know if it rented, but he watched Marx Brothers movies and things like that. Maybe it was the Three Stooges, but it's not what makes me laugh, it's what makes you laugh because we all have different types of senses of humor. I mean, things like Mr. Bean, things that are, shows like Schitt's Creek. It's going to be different for different people, or just watching stand-up comedy online, which can be free. I mean, to me, laughter is the best medicine. And I don't have the scientific reason for this, but what I've read is there's something called T cells, and that when you laugh, you release more of them. And these are the ones that fight cancer. So I think there needs to be more of a Patch Adams approach to medicine in general and cancer in particular, because I understand it's serious and people are dying. But, even if I was dying, I'd still want to die laughing. I think.
Absolutely. So With your cancer, I guess we didn't really talk about what type of cancer, how was it diagnosed and
Yeah, that's
what
funny. Well,
exactly?
it's so funny the type of cancer because you tell people non-small cell lung cancer, and the people that know anything about it go, "You got the good kind of cancer." Let me tell you, there's no good kind of cancer. Okay, there is no, but I guess compared to small cell, which is faster. But when you tell somebody with cancer they have the good kind of cancer, it's like really because I didn't know there was a good kind of cancer. So I was diagnosed incidentally. Well, okay, I was officially diagnosed on Saturday, April 14th, 2023. But 6 months prior, I had an abdominal CT scan for an unrelated issue, which I never had, that picked up some tumors on my lung and liver at the time, 4 millimeters. And the doctor said, don't worry. The radiologist wrote, just do a lung CT scan in 6 months. So the day after my birthday in 2023, which was March 23rd, I had a lung CT scan and they found a 14 millimeter spiculated tumor in my left lower lobe. And the doctor said, oh, don't worry. So then on April 13th, I had a PET scan, my first of many PET scans, and it had something high avid, high SUV, and they basically diagnosed me with lung cancer. The way they diagnosed me was not a great way for people with anxiety. Back in the day, if something happened, your doctor would actually call you on the phone. But now we have these charting systems. Mine is called My Health Online. It was basically dumped in my chart at like 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning, nobody to talk to for at least 48 hours. So that was kind of not so cool by itself. And so we were going to be doing watchful waiting for a while mainly because of my anxiety, because at 14 millimeters, the tumor was pretty small. And it's not that it would be impossible to biopsy at 14 millimeters, but the interventional radiologist that did end up doing my biopsy at 28 said don't know if I could have gotten it at 14. It would have been very, very, very difficult. And I got a pneumothorax as it was even at 28. And so what they were going to do is just take my left lower lobe out. And it's like, well, isn't that a little bit of extreme? You don't even know if I have cancer. And the thoracic oncologist said, well, we can find out afterwards. And he goes, I go, well, I would be way more upset if you took my whole left lower lobe out. Remember, I have asthma and I also have COPD, and I didn't have cancer. Than if you didn't do it and I did. I just didn't see the efficacy in that. It just seemed like a crapshoot. But it was suggesting strongly that I had cancer. So I couldn't get to see an oncologist because we'll use an acting reference here since I'm a showbiz wannabe. You can't get a show on Broadway till you get a show on Broadway. Well, you can't get an oncologist till you have a biopsy. There's a saying, no meat, no treat. And so the thing is I was told not to get a biopsy by the thoracic surgeon. He said, because a biopsy, if it's cancer, it's cancer. But if it's not, it could still be cancer. So he was recommending against the biopsy, and it was it was not in a good place. It was a millimeter from the aorta. So it wasn't like it was a real easy thing to do. And so he sent me he said, we could have radiation. So because the radiation oncologist would see me even without a biopsy. So I saw a very nice radiation oncologist, and she said, we can do radiation. And it's like, I don't know how anybody gets anything done, because when they read you all the potential side effects, it's like, it does not make you want to sign that piece of paper, honestly. But she said the truth is I don't think the kind that we do here, which is called SBRT, small beam radiation therapy, is the type you need. I think you need something called proton beam, and it's available at places like UCSD and different places, Loma Linda. And so I waited for an appointment with a radiation oncologist there, and I just it's just of all the what I call it the standard of scare, which many people have, which is surgery, chemo, and radiation in a variety of different orders. If somebody put a gun to my head and said you have to choose one, that seemed like, I don't want to say the safest for me, but the least anxiety provoking,
Sure.
because you don't need anesthesia for it. And I had talked to a lot of people that had very good, I mean, there are, of course, serious side effects, including needing open heart surgery from it. But it just seemed a little bit like less anxiety provoking to me than surgery seemed like the worst possible thing. And chemo, I'm a very delicate person. I have socks that say that I'm a delicate F flour on my socks. I'm so sensitive to drugs and medications. I'm a slow acetylator, a slow methylator. I don't need a lot to get the effect. And I just thought chemo would just destroy me. So I didn't want that. And so I thought, maybe I'll get some radiation. And, Dr. McDougall was helping me a lot while he was alive. And he was like, he goes, you got time, you got time. I understand if you want to get treatment, but I think you're going to die with it instead of from it. So we kept doing the watchful waiting. Didn't have any symptoms of cancer that I know of, or even lung disease, other than, I've always had a little bit of asthma and COPD, but that it didn't get any worse. I did have a pleural effusion once, and for those 3 days, I wasn't able to breathe if I were to lay down, but I wouldn't go to the emergency room. That's the thing. I'll probably die of my own stupidity because when it is, I'm just so afraid of doctors. It's kind of funny in a way that I won't go to the emergency room. So we were doing watchful waiting, which means getting CT scans every 6 months. And it was growing, but it was really growing very, very slowly. And even the people that were worried were like, well, don't really worry. It's going very, very slowly. I wanted an oncologist, though, because there's all these supportive services that I have now that without an oncologist, I didn't have privy to, meaning a medical oncologist, like the free wig, like the support groups, like all these things that they do to support patients with cancer. But none of them would see me without a biopsy. So I paid $2,200 of my own money in December of 2023 to a company called Datar Genetics. I've had the gentleman on my show explaining what that was. It's called a blood biopsy or a liquid biopsy. It's no more painful than getting a blood test, and it showed lung adenocarcinoma. So it actually matched up with what the tumor said. And then I finally got somebody to agree to be my oncologist, but even then it took till October of 2024 to actually have my first appointment. And by the time that happened, I had gone from stage 1A to stage 3 with a metastases, unfortunately. But the good news is the tumor was now big enough at 28 millimeters to biopsy very safely with assurance that the guy was going to get it. And I'm glad I had that done because in order to get the treatment that I'm getting now, which is called Keytruda, you can't get any kind of treatment other than maybe surgery and radiation without the biopsy. Because what are they going to do? Just guess, right? And I was 85% very strong match for Keytruda, which I was really, really happy about because even Dr. Goldhammer, who is my friend and mentor and traditionally against most cancer treatment, said that immunotherapy, he believed, had a lot of promising data. They had patients at the True North Health Center that had complete remissions from immunotherapy drugs, and that although anything is possible, people can still get side effects and allergic reactions, that it's generally very well tolerated and much gentler than chemotherapy. So I've had one treatment, which was completely botched, but I'm supposed to get some more soon.
I've had patients do very well with immunotherapy, even melanoma was very
Yeah.
aggressive, and they did well. They did
That's
really.
great. It's good to know, and it's so funny because it's like, at one point in my life, all my friends were chefs, and then now all of them are either comedians or cancer patients, which in itself is kind of funny because, I think, with people with anxiety, I don't know, I can't vouch for everybody with anxiety, but for me, that old saying, knowledge is power, and not sticking my head in the sand and just letting the doctors do what they want. Talking to people has been really helpful to me. People that are that especially survivors and especially survivors of my kind of cancer. So when I meet people that are now, I've met several that are 10-year, 12-year, and 17-year lung cancer survivors. That's really hopeful to me and inspiring. But on the other side is when you are immersed in the cancer space and going to these groups, this is the first time this happened to me since starting group in November. I get a text message from a friend of mine in LA, whose sister, who's a couple years older than me, was diagnosed with the same cancer as I was around the same time. And then she passed. And it's like, when that happens, it just, you get so, you have the reality of that, it's like, I mean, I don't want to say like I'm next, but it's like it hits you hard and it hits you different. And everything hits you hard and different when you have cancer because you're seeing the world through eyes that now understand that life as we know it as humans is finite. And I know everybody says they know it. No, you don't. I promise you, you don't. Every day it's so different now. In some ways, a lot of people say cancer is a gift, and it's without the anxiety, it would be better because I do appreciate things a lot more, like little things, like just being with my dog Bailey, like priorities, like I, that like I said to my husband Charles, I said, look, I'm going to be 65. I'm eligible for Social Security. I really think it's time for me to retire and just enjoy my life. And he goes, well, what would you do? And a lot of people would say, oh, I'd travel the world and I'd go to Paris. And I'm like, well, I'd walk Bailey. And then I'm thinking, I'd have a sandwich. There's this place that has this vegan sandwich. And it's like, that's to me, like, it's, those are, you really understand what makes you happy. And the best part about cancer is if you're a people pleaser, and I didn't think I was, but I think I was more than I realized, it's so easy to say no. Cancer is a get out of jail free card. And when people push me now, seriously, Dr. Marbas, it's like, I always was, especially there's certain people I won't mention and maybe they won't be watching that always try to get me to do what they want to do. And it's like now it's like, nope, sorry, got cancer, can't do it. Don't, oh, and I don't have to go to jury duty ever again, ever. The doctor said, you never have to do it now, never. Now that is a gift right there. And this is another good thing about cancer is at least while I'm in active treatment, which will be 6 months or could be longer, I am not allowed to go to the dentist. Absolutely not allowed unless it's an emergency. And that's where a lot of my phobia, I should mention, even before I was allergic to the general anesthetic, my dad had a brain injury and he was violent. He was kicked in the head by a horse. And for whatever reason, and I'll never actually know now because we went to a dentist as a children and the dentist did not use Novocaine. And when you're 7 and you're not getting your teeth drilled without Novocaine, it's the most torturous thing in the world. And so it all started with first a fear of the dentist, right? And I went to a pedodontist until like I was married, and he said, "Look, you got to go." So guess what? I didn't go to the dentist for years. And they have this thing called nitrous oxide. Talk about laughing. You want to laugh? Nitrous oxide is the way to go. So I can handle certain dental procedures now, but yeah, it's had an interesting life.
No, absolutely. And I mean, I know I have a few more minutes here till I have to jump to the healing kitchen, but I really want to say I predict there's going to be a Chef AJ in the near future with who's going to be up on stage sharing and making people laugh about cancer because
That's
everything's
my
been
dream. I've been working on an act about not making fun of cancer. I understand, but my cancer, my experience with cancer,
yeah.
and because I shared it too early on without coming public, people were like really sad. But now that they know, look, it's okay to laugh. Like I'll say things like, when me and my husband have little squabbles, he'll go, cancer, blah, blah, blah. Or I'll try to get him to come to one of these support groups for the caregiver or the spouse, and he doesn't want to do it. And I go, but Charles, you can meet your next wife there, so I feel like finding the humor in everything is the only way to get out of uh this this pickle that I'm in. And I think it's the best way to approach, but it doesn't mean things aren't serious. But think about that movie with Roberto Benigni, A Beautiful Life, a comedy about the Holocaust. Now,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it's just about finding the beauty and meaning in life, whatever your circumstances are. And it doesn't mean it's easy, but you know, it's what
It
I
is.
got. So that's what I'm gonna do.
I think there's no better way to end than just saying you're finding the beauty in the circumstance that you're at. And so I would love to hear in the future, maybe we can get you back on if you have a little piece of whatever that piece, maybe your presentation or your act. I would love to hear some of the jokes that because you've been cracking me up all day. So laughter is the best medicine and maybe you can help us laugh more.
Absolutely. Well, here's the thing. You treat a lot of people with, I'm sure diabetes and heart disease. They don't get anything for it. When you have cancer, they give you a bag, like a bag of stuff. Like you get a pillow and a candle and you get a bracelet and you get a wig. I mean, all those people with all those other diseases, they get nothing.
I think there you go. That so my gosh, I love it. Oh, Chef
Thank
AJ,
you.
AJ, we love you, and we are only wishing you the best healing, love, and joy that we can send your way. ever we can do anything or I can do anything, let me know,
Oh,
please.
you have been the best. You've been such a dear friend and support. Thank you, Dr. Marbas, and I wish everyone the best of health.
Thanks for tuning in to the Habit Healers podcast. Remember, being a habit healer isn't about perfection. It's about choosing healing one habit at a time. So if today's episode resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to download the Habit Healer Manifesto. It is your daily reminder of the identity you're stepping into. So grab it now at the link below or head on over to drmarbas.com and be happy to join our newsletter and so many wonderful resources. And remember, you are always one healing habit away. I'll see you next time.